We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone.
हम ज़मीन के रहने वालों की तरफ से आपको खुश आमदीद कहते हैं।
Hola y saludos a todos.
Greetings and friendly wishes to all who may encounter this Voyager and receive this message.
Hello, greetings mga ka-spacers natin out there from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And sa lahat ng ating mga ka-spacers na nakatutok ngayon worldwide and netwide, magandang araw po sa inyong lahat and welcome to another episode of COSMOQUEST, a podcast. So mga ka-spacers, in this episode we will be featuring one of our webinars, and this webinar is about the ARTEMIS program, the ARTEMIS Lunar Program. And this webinar was facilitated by Mr Rodion Herrera. So join us as we listen again to this webinar facilitated by Mr Herrera, hosted by Ms Tricha Mae Ramos, and an opening remarks by the President of the Vedan Society of Young Astronomers, Ms Angeleen Quilang. And before we proceed with our episode tonight, please don't forget mga ka-spacers to like and share this episode of COSMOQuest so that we could reach more people, especially the students out there, so that they would be engaged in the sciences. So pakiusap lang po mga ka-spacers, like and share this episode. Please like and follow our Facebook page, the Bedan Society of Young Astronomers. Please like and follow the Facebook page of the Skywatcher Society of Las Piñas, and also my Facebook page, the Science Guy Ka-Spacers channel. Also, please don't forget mga ka-spacers to subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Science Guy Professor Jun Cajigal. So join us as we listen again to this webinar about the ARTEMIS Lunar Program facilitated by Mr Rodion Herrera.
Before anything else, let me give the virtual floor to our very altruistic president of the Bedan Society of Young Astronomers, Ms Angeleen Quilang, for her opening remarks.
Astronomy compels the soul to look upwards and lead us from this world to another. Plato once said, "Good afternoon, young aspiring astronomers in heart. A lot of you may know me, but let me introduce myself. I am Angeleen Quilang, ang makuliit na presidente ng Bedan Society of Young Astronomers. I would like to start by wishing you and your families my personal best for your health and safety in these difficult times. I would also like to express my profound gratitude to all those doctors, nurses, and workers who are serving so selflessly on the front lines of this health crisis. As we continue to embark our everyday lives while reaching our stars, the Bedan Society of Young Astronomers gladly presents to you our webinar entitled Going Back to the Moon, the ARTEMIS Project with Mr Rodion Herrera, where after a long wait of 50 years, man's going back to the moon. As we are gathered today, I would like to say thank you to everyone who attended this webinar. I would also like to thank Mr. Benjamin Sinajo for his help in our Zoom meeting and my officers for staying and helping in this webinar. I would like to also commend our intergalactic space moderator, Sir Jun Cajigal, for the utmost support in every BSYA's work. No need to wait, everyone. Are you all ready to witness an amazing and fascinating webinar? I would not hold you much longer. Take it away, Ms Tricha Mae Ramos.
Thank you, Ms. Quilang, for our opening remarks. And to formally begin our most awaited webinar, let me first give you a glimpse of what this webinar will be about. Only a few months ago, NASA officials were still hashing out plans for a slow and steady return to the moon. The plan was to land the next moon and the first woman on the moon. And its goal is to establish a sustainable presence on the moon to support future missions to Mars. Wow, this is really an interesting topic for a webinar, especially that we have our guest speaker that will give us more information about this matter. Let me introduce our guest speaker for today. He works at the Astronomical Solutions in the Middle East. So mga ka-spacers, let us give Mr. Rodion Herrera a virtual round of applause. Good morning, Mr. Rodion Herrera.
Hello, good morning, Shanae.
Please let
Thank you for
us
having
know.
me.
Thank you po. Please let us know if you're ready to present or share your screen na po.
Yeah, you can start the PowerPoint, and I'll just tell you if we'll move on kind of to the next slide.
Okay po. Thank you po.
Okay. And of course, first of all, I would like to thank the Bedan Society of Young Astronomers for inviting me, especially si Sir Jun. Sumusubaybay ako lagi sa mga sinishare ni Sir Jun because I'm also the administrator of the Philippine Astronomy Forum. And from time to time, si Sir June, masigasig nag-share ng mga activities ninyo. Pati na another group that I am involved in is another FB group that I'm administering is Space One. No? So with Space One, it is a place where people can gather. Yung mga Pilipino na interested in space, I gather them in my group Space One. Kasi yung medyo magkaiba kasi yung astronomy as a science and space science, which is space exploration, which is what we're going to talk about now. So back sometime in the early 2000s, I got involved in some simulation projects online. No? As a form of a hobby. But I did not realize that hobby would eventually lead me to join a NASA-funded project called Moonworld. No? So with Moonworld,
recording in progress.
Nagdevelop kami ng isang, you're all familiar, you're young people. Alam ko yung mga young people ngayon mahilig sa mga MMO games, yung mga RPG games online. So parang ganito ito. So it's like an RPG game online, pero it's educational yung purpose. In this case, parang the participants will be doing a field trip, a virtual field trip on the moon. So our company, Avitrian, is a content creation company. So it was tasked to develop yung area kung saan mangyayari yung field trip. So I was also in charge of designing the astronaut suits and the rover. Nakikita niyo dyan sa picture, may lunar rover that will descend inside a crater to collect rock samples. So para maengganyo, this was primarily yung audience nito was American children kasi nga this is a NASA-funded project. So please move on to the next slide. Unfortunately, natapos yung Moonworld, naputol siya kasi President Obama actually stopped funding the yung mga ibang educational institutions that cater to space. Sayang nga kasi medyo nagkaroon ng may financial crisis in the mid-2000s or towards the late 2000s kaya talagang medyo kinulang na sila ng budget. Move on to the next slide, please. So for a while then, after that, I was a planetarium lecturer. So for Voyager Educational and Event Services in Davao City. So you're all familiar with what a planetarium is, no? We have our national planetarium, which unfortunately is about to close there in Manila. And there's a new one, I think, somewhere in Diliman, di ba? May bagong planetarium. By the way, is my audio okay? Still okay? Can you guys hear me?
Sir.
Okay. Okay. So I taught basic astronomy for 5 years. No, we had a bus basically that went around Mindanao and the Visayas, and we brought along our planetarium and several telescopes to different schools. I think in my last count, we probably reached more than 1,000 schools all over Mindanao in 5 years' time. Next slide, please. So after that, kung ano-ano kasing napapasukan ko because of my background and interests, along with my amateur astronomy hobby, napahilig din po tayo sa tinatawag ng mga simulations, both flight simulations and space simulations. And this led to me getting involved in a research project involving drones. No? Usong-uso ngayon yung mga drones. Unfortunately, syempre since it's technology, ginagamit din siya unfortunately for warfare. Kung alam niyo naman, may gulo ngayon na nangyayari sa Eastern Europe, sa Ukraine. So drones are really a technology that's being explored now for its many uses. Unfortunately, ginagamit din sa gera. Pero yung research namin, hindi naman talaga for warfare, pero designed siya for multi-purpose use. So since my background in simulations was helpful, they tapped me into making a simulation of how to train people to fly drone systems. Next slide, please. You don't have to play this video because this is quite long. I was also tasked during my time with Regulus Space Tech, which is a company in Manila and Los Baños, Laguna, to design and develop a what if. What if we had the capability, the Philippines had the capability to launch a simple microsatellite into orbit? where it should be launched. In this case, yung launch site na napili namin is in Mindanao, in Mati, no, Davao Oriental. So this video, I might be able to share a link na lang so that you can watch later. This is a fully simulated launch from Mindanao, Philippines, up to low Earth orbit carrying a microsat. So I was involved in figuring out, no? This was during the time of the National Space Development Program, which was the precursor of the Philippine Space Agency. Okay, next slide, please. And from time to time, kung may time, kasi the fact na I was being pulled from one activity to another, I'm actually trying to finish my sport pilot certificate. I fly recreational aircraft. Yung mga tinatawag na light sport aircraft or LSA, mga ultralight. Yung sa unang tingin, akala mo parang parang saranggola na may motor, no? These are small aircraft, and from time to time, if I get the time to go back to Mindanao, kasi I go to this flying club in Mindanao, and I fly a small aircraft, and hopefully, within a few years' time, pagbalik ko, I would be finishing my sport pilot certificate. Next slide, please. And from time to time, then I've been involved with the. Can you just breeze through the next slides? Kasi medyo we're running out of time. I've been involved with helping our Philippine military. Kasi simulations nga involve software that can be used to help our military, number one, estimate their budgets. At saka of course, in actual battle scenario, kunwari, di ba, may threat tayo ngayon from China. Kasi nag-encroach na. Please move on to the next few slides kasi magbibigyan na tayo with the ARTEMIS part of the program. I'm just showing you some of the activities that I was involved with our Philippine military in trying to come up with the ito na. So I'm going to talk now kasi kailangan we have to get into the heart of the matter, which is the ARTEMIS program of NASA, no? And it's a very exciting program, and this is the moon program of your generation. Ano nga ba yung tawag sa generation ninyo? Generation Z. Kasi I belong to Generation X, Gen Xer ako eh. So actually, during the tail end of the Apollo missions, naabutan ko pa yan kasi I was born in 1971. So the last Apollo mission was in 1972 in December. So although hindi ko na yun masyadong matandaan, pero while growing up, my parents would talk about it. Meron pa ring excitement eh. I could feel the excitement in my parents' voices when they were watching on TV and seeing the astronauts walking on the moon. Pero yun nga, parang bitin, di ba? Kasi parang hindi na pagpatuloy. Why? Because it's actually quite expensive. Move on to the next slide, please. It's actually quite expensive, this endeavor, no? And by the way, if I may, I was thinking of correcting actually your poster, no? Kasi ARTEMIS is not just a project, no? It is actually a program. So if you try to figure out the definition of program versus project, mas malaki yung program. And it actually, underneath the umbrella program, there are smaller programs. And under those smaller programs, meron ding mga maliliit na project. Kasi yung project, when we say project kasi, talagang merong specific goal. Parang isang goal, part ka lang ng isang mas malaki pang structure. So in this case, ito yung yung malaking structure, which is the yung overarching program, which is the ARTEMIS program. So if you can see in this slide, is very complex. And what we can talk about is only a very small portion of this, no? Particularly yung dyan sa may left side, nakikita niyo yung Orion program, tapos yung space launch system. That's what we're going to talk about actually. As a whole, it's very complex, and I don't think a webinar na ganitong scale is enough. In fact, I am currently actually also a part-time faculty at the Ateneo University in Davao, the Ateneo de Davao University, and I teach an elective course on aerospace engineering. So things like this, no? Space systems require entire semesters to understand fully. Talaga, kung gusto nyo talagang malaman. Pero don't worry, dito sa chat, I'm going to give you 2 links to 2 YouTube videos that actually will give you everything. Ang maganda kasi sana when we planned out this webinar, ang magandang topic talaga dito is not really ARTEMIS itself, but how it might relate to, let's say, the Philippine Space Agency para mas localized, para may mas mapag-usapan tayo. Kasi actually, I'm just echoing out what is already out there. Meaning, if you really want to know about the Artemis program, all you need to do is to check yung mga YouTube, no? I will provide you with two of very useful links na talagang very rich in information. So please move on to the next slide. So like what I said earlier, yung budget ng ng Artemis is really big. Pero if you compare it to the Apollo program, hindi pa umabot na ganong kalaki. Although on paper it says 25.4 billion yung previous Apollo program. Actually, when adjusted to today's money, kasi ganun yan may inflation as the years go by, yung amount before is actually larger now if you try to think about it. So 158 billion yung na-spend in total, no? In today's money dun sa Apollo project. Imagine that. That was more than around 10 years or more, a little bit more, mga 11-year project. Nag-offshoot pa yon, nagkaroon pa ng Skylab, and eventually nagkaroon na ng space shuttle program. Pero Artemis, to date, no, ang na-spend na yata ng NASA from 2020 to 2024 is around 35 billion. Yan, just to give you a general idea. And by the way, nakita nyo, naka-side by side yung logo, no? This is important because when they were selecting the name for the program, sabi nila, Artemis ang pipiliin natin kasi these are names of Greek gods, di ba? So they chose Apollo kasi it was man's first foray into space, and they said, maganda ito si Apollo na gamitin na name kasi parang si Apollo in his fire chariot going around space, di ba? Although moon yung pinuntahan nila, hindi naman umikot yung Apollo program around the solar system. Pero this time, Artemis yung magiging name nung upcoming missions kasi Artemis happens to be in Greek mythology the sister of Apollo, di ba? Sister niya. And she represents the moon, no? And importante to know that this is just happenstance, no? Although I'm not trying to demean the value of it, na there will be a first woman to actually step on the moon. Kasi it could be anyone. It could be anyone. It could be someone who is transgender, for all we know, di ba? Who will be stepping on the moon. So it could be anyone. It's only happenstance, and we're very happy na talagang all genders are inclusive when trying to explore outer space, di ba? So please move on to the next slide. Okay, so here is the most important component of the Artemis program, which is the crew capsule. This is the multipurpose crew vehicle which has undergone so many designs kasi doon pa sa time ng tinatawag na Constellation program ni President Bush in the early 2000s, na-scrap na yon, no? Pinalitan kasi sabi nga ni Obama, when Obama got elected, sobrang inflated daw ng budget ng NASA, dapat i-rescale natin. So katakot-takot na changes ang ginawa, pero hindi sinasacrifice yung safety ng astronauts. Kaya nga hanggang ngayon, talaga nagsasuffer pa rin napakaraming delay etong Artemis program. Narinig nyo, di ba? Dapat nga, January pa daw, meron ng unmanned Artemis that went to the moon, tried a few maneuvers and went back. Pero na-delay yun ng several months, and then yung next announcement, dapat next month na, May or June. Na-cancel na naman kasi may problema na naman. And then ngayon, ang most recent announcement, which is today, no? In-announce lang yata ng NASA, August na daw yung launch for Artemis 1 test mission going to the moon. Wala pong tao yan, ha? This is just unmanned. All in all, it's just for the safety of the people. You know, we value human lives, kaya ganon. So please move on to the next slide. In fact, you can even move on to the next few slides. Kasi ito lang naman yung part ng Artemis. Ito, stop muna dito. This is the SLS. Uy, medyo over na tayo. Can you move back one slide? Ito yung isang major component din ng Artemis, which is the SLS. Forward one slide. I'm really sorry for the delay. Okay. So yung SLS kasi, this is the new Saturn V. Kasi dati yung nagdala sa moon, napakalaking rocket nun, yung Saturn V rocket. And you're all familiar with this configuration, no? Black and white siya na rocket, tapos parang may chessboard configuration sa side. Kung titingnan nyo yung SLS, familiar pa rin siya, pero kung titingnan nyo mabuti, The general construction is just like the external fuel tank and the solid rocket boosters yung nasa side ng Space Shuttle program. So kaya kinikriticize yung NASA minsan, sabi, bakit parang reuse nyo lang yung technology? Bakit hindi kayo nag-i-innovate? Like Elon Musk is doing, di ba, with SpaceX. Kaya nga, papasok din yung SpaceX dito sa ating usapan later when we come towards the end of my presentation. Pero ito ang SLS, it's the most powerful rocket. If it launches, it will be the most powerful rocket on Earth. No? Kasi it is designed not only to send humans to the moon, but possibly even to Mars, no, and beyond, even to visit some asteroids, sabi nila. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, this is a great exercise kasi pwede nyo gawin ito if you have access to a basketball. Uy, balik nyo. If you have access to a basketball and a tennis ball, this is roughly in proportion the comparative sizes of the Earth and the Moon. So the Earth is the basketball and the tennis ball is the Moon. So do you know how far? Ito talagang hindi maintindihan ng iba kasi lalo na kung tumitingin ka sa mga diagrams when you see the Moon, the Artemis missions, for instance. The Artemis missions, meron siyang mga diagram on how we will reach the Moon. Diba? Nakikita nyo yan sa internet if you search Artemis flight plan or Artemis flight profile. Makikita niyo yung mga diagram, medyo exaggerated po yan, medyo mali. Pero that is important kasi hindi po pwedeng i-drawing yung actual diagram in a piece of paper because this is the reality. Okay, next slide. The reality is the Moon is very far away. So kung may maghahawak ng basketball and yung isa namang the other person will be holding the tennis ball, in proportion to their sizes, the actual distance from the Earth to the Moon, from the basketball to the tennis ball, would actually be 7.3 meters. Now, imagine yourself. Sige, gawin nyo to, no? Masaya to na parang either thought experiment or actual experiment. So imagine the spacecraft will be tinier than a pinhead. No? Sobrang liit po ng spacecraft. So imagine niyo how nakahawak kayo ng basketball, parang you're just doing like that na napakaliit nung Orion spacecraft, and that has to travel that distance, which is on average around 390,000 kilometers, go to the Moon over there, yung tennis ball, and then go back later, no, after the mission. Grabing this is what they call a celestial ballet, no? This is orbital mechanics. Very complex, kaya nga sabi ko, hindi mako-cover ng ating webinar yung talagang going into the intricate parts of how such a mission will undergo. Kasi number one, kung mahilig kayo sa physics, baka may idea na kayo kasi this involves orbital dynamics or orbital mechanics. If you know how an object reaches Earth orbit, then nasa first stage na kayo. Medyo maintindihan nyo na ito. Okay, next slide please. Medyo bumabagal. Ito yung mga diagram na sinasabi ko kanina. For instance, in this particular diagram, you can see that the Earth and the Moon are quite close, which is not true, di ba? Based on my previous picture. Pero the reason why this diagram is miniaturized like this, na pinalapit yung Earth and Moon, for you to be able to understand the different components of the flight plan. And this is only Artemis 1. And it's important to note na walang tao. This is just an unmanned mission. Pero importante na i-test nila lahat, and this will be a long duration mission, no? Aabutin daw siguro ng up to maybe 42 days in total. Depende, no? Kasi baka magkaroon ng mga malfunction and so on. Kaya they have to think about such things. And there are sensors aboard. Ang number one nga pala ang gusto nilang malaman is how much radiation is being collected during the trip. Kasi alam nyo, okay lang dyan sa ISS. Di ba may mga astronauts ngayon sa ISS, the International Space Station. In lower Earth orbit, the altitude is sufficient enough na medyo napoprotect pa rin yung mga astronauts ng the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere, no? Pati na yung tinatawag na Van Allen belts. Pero when we reach beyond that part, yung siguro above 100,000 feet above the Earth's surface, talagang mabobombard na tayo ng kung ano-anong klaseng radiation. Among them, solar radiation, no? Yung solar flares, di ba? Nung isang araw nga, may M-class solar flares, no? that disrupted mga communications, and you're familiar, no, na pag merong malakas na solar flare na disrupt yung electrical service, pati na communications here on Earth. So imagine what can that do to a human body na nagpo-float lang in space without any protection at all. Fortunately, they designed the Orion capsule to have some protection for the astronauts. Tapos, of course, nakasuot pa sila ng spacesuit. So marami pang ibang layers of protection that they can depend on. So again, we cannot go into in-depth on this plan, and I will share with you those links to the videos. Makikita nyo doon on how this will happen. But this is not the final flight plan. Sabi ko nga, this is only the Artemis 1 flight plan. Can you please move on to the next slide? So mahaba kasi ito na program. As you can see in this diagram, on the bottom you see 2020, and at the lower right corner you see 2024. Kasi yan yung target. Pero you know what? Hindi naman sa negative thinker ako, pero with all the delays going on right now and problems trying to determine whether this cooperation with SpaceX will really work. Kasi move on to the next slide, please. Kasi alam nyo, may component itong Artemis program na magla-land talaga sa moon. So in-outsource siya ng NASA. Sabi ng NASA, sige kayo, mga companies, private companies, mag-offer kayo ng mga design for the lander. Tapos titingnan namin, i-evaluate ng NASA kung sino daw yung pwedeng masaselect. So next slide, please. Hulaan nyo kung sinong na-select. Alam nyo na siguro, it was in the news. Kasi very influential siya ngayon. Do you know that he just bought Twitter, di ba? For 44 billion ba yun? Elon Musk won the contract. Siya yung kanyang company, SpaceX, yung gagawa ng lander. But this complicates matters, you know why? Kasi tingnan nyo, makikita nyo to siguro later. Sige, move on to the next slide. Medyo magiging complex siya kasi if you look at this, if this is the final Artemis, this will be actually the first landing. Nakikita niyo yung pulang, may pula dyan na circle or yung parang oval. That is the gateway. The gateway will serve as like a space station that will orbit the moon in a very strange way. And there's a purpose for this orbit. It is designed so that it can shift landing sites easily para mabisita nila yung iba-ibang parts ng moon. At the same time, it is a rehearsal orbit kasi pwede po mag-launch ng mission directly from the moon to Mars. And actually, mas mura in terms of fuel, mas mura mag-conduct ng mission directly from the moon to Mars. Kasi bakit? Very simple. It's physics. Gravity is less. I mean, the gravitational attraction of the moon is less than the Earth, and you don't have to contend with the thick atmosphere. So the launch platform to reach Mars, hindi masyadong malaki. So that is the bonus. Ang problema, okay, move on to the next slide. Ang problema nito, this is gateway, no? This is how they plan gateway will look like, no? Expandable po ito, pwede nilang lagyan ng iba-iba pang modules just like the International Space Station. Kunwari, yung Japan nag-declare na, gagawa din kami ng lander. Pero kailangan namin ng space sa gateway. So dudugtungan na lang nila ng additional module. Katulad ng ginawa nila sa ISS. If you're familiar with the Kibo module, di ba yung Kibo module sa Japan yon. So dadagdagan lang ito as long as people keep contributing to the program. Pero look at the top. Nakikita niyo yung Human Lander System or the HLS. Papalitan na yan. Diyan ikakabit yung Starship ng SpaceX. Kung iisipin niyo, medyo mahirap kasi dambuhala kasi yun eh. Napakalaki nung Starship ng SpaceX. It will dwarf the gateway actually. So that will actually present problems. So hanggang ngayon yata hindi pa yan nare-resolve. So imagine with these problems, hindi naman sa totally skeptical ako, pero I'm beginning to have doubts if they will reach the target of the first woman and basically the second major exploration of the moon by 2024. It might extend for another year maybe. So that's it. So basic summary lang ng Artemis program, and this is your generation's great space exploration adventure. Kasi this will not only, this will basically build on the skills to reach Mars. So ano kayo, no? Magiging witness kayo nito in full HD or 4K. Kasi nung time ko, puro lang grainy pictures and alam niyo yung result nun. Conspiracy theories, yung sasabi nila, wala namang nakapunta sa moon naka-encounter na kayo ng mga ganyan. Hindi naman totoo yun May mga video pa nga ang labo-labo nga baka pinaglaruan lang nila yung mga camera, ganon, mga lighting, sa studio lang yung ginawa. That is because basically that time, hindi pa adequate yung imaging technology and TV technology. Pero now, with the advent of satellite communications and 4K, magsasawa kayo sa footage na ipapadala nila when they actually reach the moon. So there we go. So pwede na akong mag-end ng presentation ko na.
Wow, thank you, Mr. Rodion Herrera, for that very insightful and smooth talk. Well, it's now time to interact, mga ka-spacers.
So any questions?
Ano yung magiging benefit po ng Artemis project to humanity?
This is a common question, kasi especially I showed you that slide showing the expenses that were incurred. No? Katulad din itong case ni Elon Musk that he bought Twitter. Alam nyo, may nagsasabi na kung ibibigay lang daw niya yung pera na yan to the UN to feed the world, baka daw masolve ang world hunger. Mga ganon, di ba? Pero just imagine, do you think this webinar is possible right now without the Apollo program? Yan pa lang. Do you think na during the time na nagka-COVID, tapos hindi tayo makapag-aral, nagkaroon tuloy ng mga distance learning via the internet? The development of the internet, the development of microcomputers, the development of your cell phones, all this is a product of space technology. So, kung hindi tayo mag-explore, kung hindi natin i-advance ang science and technology, anong mangyayari? Meaning, you cannot even picture what life would be like. Siguro magiging stagnant, no? Can you imagine a time na kung hindi nangyari yung space program in the 1960s, siguro, ano na ngayon, unleaded gasoline pa rin leaded gasoline pa rin yung mga kotse. So, siguro half of us would have lung cancers already. Kasi ganun technology progresses, it involves human lives, it involves our health. Kasi di ba, all of the advances in computer technology, for instance, nakakontribute din sa health sciences. So imagine, we're enjoying our lives now better. Diseases like COVID are getting detected faster. We owe that all in part to space technology. So yun lang. Actually, it's a very simple concept pero hindi maintindihan ng iba. They cannot wrap their heads around the fact na hindi ito uusbong, hindi ito lalago kung hindi tayo nag-explore. If we don't explore, it will just stagnate. Totoo yan. Because you have seen countries that do that. There are countries around the world right now na hindi nagpa-progress ang science nila to a certain extent and their economy is actually failing. Now, their economies are failing. So, importante rin. Kaya nga nagtayo tayo ng space agency, di ba? Because we don't want to be left behind in these advances and progress. Yung direct na impact that this will have is very simple. Earth Part 2. Kasi, we don't know, no? Have you heard of near-Earth objects? Mga asteroids. Napanood nyo siguro yun, yung, yung movie na yun, yung Netflix na naging popular last December. It was about an asteroid coming to Earth or a comet and then nobody cared. No?
Look up, sir.
Look up. No, don't look up. See? Tipong that can actually happen. Akala ng iba, Netflix movie lang yan, hindi yan mangyayari. There are people right now who are monitoring really large asteroids and their probability of hitting the Earth. So kung hindi gagawa ng paraan ng humanity to find a place na parang backup for our civilization, then wala. Baka biglang dumating yan and then mawa-wipe out na tayong lahat. Except of course kung gusto nyo mangyari yon. Kasi may mga ganun may mga pessimistic, di ba? May mga yung mga medyo emo na nagsasabi na mabuti na siguro mangyari yon na may mahulog sa Earth and then ma-wipe out kasi wala tayong ginagawa, sinisira lang natin yung ating environment, sinisira natin yung ating paligid. Baka deserving tayo na maglaho na. Yun sa sinasabi ng iba, di ba? Pero no, I am one who is hopeful. That's why I'm into astronomy. I'm into teaching young people about science, astronomy, ganon. Kasi to let them have a glimpse of a hopeful future, of a future wherein people are living on Mars. Kasi di ba yun yung ini-imagine ni Elon Musk, that one day there will be cities on Mars. We're even envisioning, may mga nakikita tayong mga nagpo-post ng, may mga cities on Mars that are named after Philippine cities like Ternate. Diba? May mga ganun may mga gumagawa ng science fiction stories. Ang saya nun. Diba? Kasi we really have to expand our horizons. Sabi ni Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, and I will end this talk with this statement. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky is the father of rocketry, of space science. And he said, the Earth is the cradle of humankind. But we cannot live in the cradle forever. Diba? Ang mga baby, hindi naman buong buhay nyo, nakatira lang tayo sa cradle. You have to go out and grow and explore. Thank you.
Well, I guess that's about it for this episode of COSMOQUEST about the ARTEMIS Lunar Program. Sana po marami kayong natutunan about the ARTEMIS Lunar Program, and I would like to thank Mr. Rodion Herrera for facilitating that webinar. I would like to thank also Ms Tricha Mae Ramos for hosting that event, and to our President of the Vedan Society of Young Astronomers, Ms Angeleen Quilang, for her opening remarks. So mga ka-spacers, don't forget to please like and share this video, this episode of COSMOQUEST, so that we could reach more people, lalong-lalo na po yung mga estudyante, so that they would be inspired to love the sciences, at para mapagpatuloy po namin yung aming advocacy to spread the good news of science, lalong-lalo na po ang astronomy. And don't forget mga ka-spacers to like and follow the Facebook page of the Vedan Society of Young Astronomers. Please like and follow also the Facebook page of the Sky Watchers Society of Las Piñas, and also like and follow my Facebook page, the Science Guy Ka-Spacers channel. And don't forget mga ka-spacers to subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Science Guy Professor Jun Cajigal. So hanggang dito na lang po tayo. Thank you for watching this episode of COSMOQUEST. This is your ka-spacer and space commander, Professor Jun Cajigal, saying, live long and prosper. Marami pong salamat, stay safe, and till the next episode of COSMOQUEST, a podcast. Marami pong salamat. See you in our next episode. Bye-bye!
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition. Choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone.